Welcome back to the GetNet program. We are busy with this theme called the Cycle of Redemption, and today we are focusing on the sacrifice of faith. What is the meaning of the sacrifices? So if you want to learn more, stay tuned as we read the word for today. By faith, Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as a righteous man. God spoke well of his offerings, and by faith he still speaks, even though he's dead. When we think about sacrifices, the first story that comes to my mind is the story of Cain and Abel. But there's so many other stories in the Bible where people had to do sacrifices, offerings. We find there were different types of sacrifices. This was the burnt sacrifice, the guilt sacrifice, the sin sacrifice. People wanted to show gratefulness towards God. That's why they made a sacrifice. But if we think about what is a sacrifice and why did people make sacrifices? Sacrifices is usually done to a higher authority which you acknowledge and which you feel like you owe something to them. But mostly the focus is that with different animals. It can be through a dove or a lamb or a cow or anything which has blood. Because the most important thing about sacrifice was for the blood to flow. The thing is, the first time after Adam and Eve sinned and before God kicked them out of Garden of Eden, he slaughtered the first time an animal, a lamb, where the blood had to flow to cover them up. Because Adam and Eve were covering them up with leaves, which wouldn't have worked. But God knew that they needed the skin of an animal in order for them to protect themselves, to be truly covered up. Animal was slaughtered. It was the animal who need to be sacrificed. It was Abel's faith which saved him. It was his faith allowed God to accept his offering. The thing is, we fall back into the cycle of doing things in order to be saved. Ephesians 2 verse 8 until 10 talks about how it's nothing that we do what we did saved us, so we can boast about it, but it's actually it's just grace which saves us. And this whole idea is that we are saved and therefore we need to do good works. No sacrifices that we do today, nothing that we sacrifice in church, nothing that we offer through our works or being committed to God at church, nothing, or being kind to our neighbor is not what's gonna save us. What saves us is the faith sacrifice. Having total faith in God, having total faith in this God that you serve. The thing is, now we don't have to bring offerings with our lives anymore, sacrifices. We don't have to do no blood has to flow because the price is paid fully. That's why Jesus had to die on the cross. That's why the blood had to run out of his body. His body was so pierced and so brutally destroyed, but not one bone was broken. Because in scripture, when they prophesied about the Messiah that would come, who will be slaughtered like a lamb, one of the things when a lamb was slaughtered, his bones shouldn't have been broken. And this lamb, Jesus' bones weren't broken. The fulfillment wouldn't have been so perfect if Jesus' bones were broken. He was hit so many times. His body was so raw and bloody, but yet no bone was broken because he was the perfect lamb. He was spotless. He was clean. He was nothing against him because he was the chosen one. You see, now for you and me to be the perfect sacrifices to a living sacrifice for God is by being a sacrifice of faith, walking in faith, walking in power, walking in this faith, and doing everything that we can by faith. To have a faithful heart, we need to be humble. This will bring you, every time when you put yourself in a position, this reminds you of what Jesus did on the cross. He humbled himself. You and me can humble ourselves, to put ourselves in situations, not to be glorified, but to humble ourselves. To have a heart of faith, it's to be true to who God wants us to be obedient in His word, to have this desire to do the best that we can. We cannot save us. Nothing through our works, through this faith sacrifice that we do, nothing can save us. This only reminds us, this only points to what Jesus has done for us, and that is the complete sacrificial act that He did for us. And what we can do is by living a life of true faith, with true faith in Him, to be true in our faith towards Him, so that He can be glorified, not to save us, but because we are saved.